Welcome to the Geo Owl podcast.
The new era of intelligence.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the second episode of the Geo Owl podcast, where we host engaged conversations designed to advance the effectiveness of intelligence operations through technology, innovation, and application. With me today is the host, Nick Smith, the founder and CEO of Geo Owl. Nick, welcome back to Signal Fire Studios.
Matt, great to be here again. I feel like it's been a lifetime.
It has been a lifetime. I'm not gonna lie. I spent the last week going to bed at night. I wasn't thinking about you per se, but going to bed at night, like really diving deep into the whole intelligence analyst world. Because I'll be honest, when I went through the military, I felt like I had a general feel for like everything that goes on around me, you know, and then so many friends that I've made subsequent to my service, I learned about jobs and I was like, I didn't even know that existed. And the fact that not only did you have a cool job when you're in the military, but it opened the door and it, you know, built this conduit for you to establish this killer company. So it's just another reminder in my life that I should have made different decisions in the past.
You turned out all right.
Yeah, no complaints at all. But yeah, we're gonna have to cut out this part because I just totally had I was gonna say something. I totally had a brain fart. Stand by. Still rolling. What was I just gonna say?
I don't know.
All right, we got it. Everybody good? Yes, sir. Okay, so last episode, we got to know you pretty well. We got a feeling for like where you came from, the pretty cool family that you were raised in with your brothers and your parents who clearly did a fantastic job with you guys. But we just got to the point where Geo Owl becomes established, and you know you shared with us as far as your reasoning behind the name about an owl being the wise creature. As an intel analyst, you guys are like burning the midnight oil, and you felt like every other defense contractor had some sort of asinine acronym that made no sense and would generate no brand awareness or brand loyalty. But clearly, Geo Owl is not one of those. So let's spend the next couple of minutes just really diving into what Geo Owl is at a higher level, and then we'll kind of dive deeper into the industry and how the industry has evolved over the years. So share with the listeners like what Geo Owl is and what services and products do you provide and to who and for what?
Right. So Geo Owl is a geospatial technology solutions and services provider for the federal government, mainly the Department of Defense and the intelligence community. So geospatial technology, what the heck does that mean, right? Geospatial is just all about location. Some people refer to it as location intelligence. It's just understanding the X and Y axis of where things occur and understanding the relationship between location and other sources of data. That's what geospatial technology is really all about, just understanding location and deriving meaningful information from that locational data. So Geo Owl as a company, we're kind of split into three different segments. One is our technology. So we build geospatial technology, one that we've been working on recently, which is actually getting a lot of headway with the Pentagon and with different government agencies. It's called Pattern Flows. Pattern Flows was designed to fix a lot of the dirty data problems that we're having in the intelligence community. Right now, there's so many different sources of data. Everything's formatted in a different method, and it's very hard to push into this future where we want machines to do more for us if you don't have that data formatted correctly when it comes in. And even still this day, the way that intelligence information is shared and distributed is very siloed, and it's very slow.
Even still to this day, in 2021.
To this day, absolutely. We're doing a lot of the intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions the same way we did in 2005 when I was in Iraq. A lot of it's done the very same way. Information is still distributed in similar manner. Sometimes it's just like an email that goes out. And a lot of the technology and tools that the military work with, they're antiquated. Part of that is a systemic problem with the DoD's procurement processes. But then another part of that is it's just lack of innovation in this area. So we built pattern flows to solve a number of problems and kind of help push the limits of where we go with geospatial technology, how we leverage intelligence, and how we distribute that intelligence. So that's our products segment of our business.
Now, just for me to understand it for the listeners, so pattern flows, is that like an application? Is it like an app?
Yeah, so pattern flows is a set of applications. So it consists of a server, a desktop application, and a web application. And it's built on top of an open API infrastructure. What that means is that all the data coming into the system can go out of the system. And since our base level framework uses a map, that means every single tidbit of information has spatial data assigned to it. So that just allows us to provide better intelligence information across the spectrum. So it's a desktop and web application combined with a server, and we'll build a mobile application at some point once it makes sense. But it's definitely cutting edge stuff.
So at Geo Owl, you indicated that you have 3 avenues of your services. One being the technology, which you just touched on.
Right. So our products and technology. So pattern flows is our primary technology. We have some other stuff in there too, but that's the primary one. The other 2 segments are our solutions segment, which focuses primarily on producing products, right? So these are cartographic products. A lot of them are working with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency to create the digital cartographic framework for...
so you're like helping them map?
We're helping them map, yeah. We're doing all sorts of different projects for various segments of the earth, providing different types of mapping, digital mapping products. So those can range and vary on what they are, but we're actually doing that out of our 2 offices, one here in Wilmington, North Carolina, and the other in Fuquay-Varina. So we have some great partnerships with UNCW here locally and with NC State to teach people coming out of university how to leverage those geospatial skills they acquire in the university. And that's primarily what we do in our solutions and production segment of the business. And then our third segment, which is actually our largest segment, is services. So these are what we call billable full-time equivalents. These are people inside, embedded in U.S. military and government sites all throughout the world. We have people overseas right now. We have people at all sorts of fun government buildings throughout the country. Everywhere from North Carolina to California, Texas, Georgia, Florida, Virginia, and other locations. And they're working side by side with the military and the intelligence community. They're providing them valuable insight and knowledge as to what's happening on the ground, right? What's the ground truth? So they're providing that intelligence synthesis and providing guidance and consultation to the military on how to properly use their sensors, how to properly use their assets, and how to leverage all that money they spent on systems and infrastructure to get the best results out of that. So,
are these team members with Geo Owl that are actually deployed and embedded with U.S. assets? Are these guys? Are these people? Are they like gunfighters also?
No. These are intelligence contractors. So. Some of them do carry weapons, I think, on certain locations, but that's not by any means what they're there for. They're there to provide subject matter expertise on intelligence matters. And the military relies on contractors, so does the intelligence community, because as you know, in the military, people come and go so rapidly. So the contractor is always that person that's just been there and knows this stuff cold. And what we offer that's different, what Geo Owl offers, is we actually pride ourselves in kind of pushing the boundary beyond just supplying services, right? We're not just providing someone that sits there and tells the military what to do and provides guidance. We try to improve what's happening overall. We look at their mission. We try to find ways that we can help innovate, and we push those ideas and things like that into our other segments of our business to help our customers' mission. So we don't see it as just a business for us. It's who we are, and we're trying to help the military and help the government do things better. So that's what's different about us. We're not just supplying what they call butts and seats. We have really smart, amazing people in the company, and they really care about what they do day to day. So they're really always pushing the boundaries, and we have processes in place for collecting ideas and integrating those into whether that's new software products or processes and ideas to help our customers do things better.
Do all your locations have like a little wooden suggestion box with little
We have a digital
piece of
version
paper?
of the suggestion box. Yes, of course.
That's awesome.
And that's available on the phone. So there you go.
Right. So earlier you were opening a door to a topic that I feel like is central to like what we're talking about with the Geo Owl podcast. You were talking about being siloed, and you were talking about certain entities operating independently, and that rings a bell in my mind of how the intelligence community has evolved in post 9/11. So, with your experience and your knowledge of the industry and the history of the industry, can you kind of paint the picture of what the intelligence community looked like up until 9/11? Because based on my understanding from the outside is it couldn't have been more siloed. And I think that's the way it's been described to me through conversations, through reports I've read, was that all these different agencies, including the DoD, were not cross-functional, I guess the best way to say it.
Right.
So I'm curious to get your take on what the intelligence community looked like up until it hit the fan on 9/11, and we realized that we've been not doing it the right way.
Right. So before 9/11, there wasn't a cohesive intelligence community. In fact, I don't believe people even used the word intelligence community. It wasn't.
Tom Clancy did.
Maybe Tom Clancy did. But aside from Jack Ryan, I don't think people thought of it as a cohesive community until George W. Bush created the DNI, right, the Director of National Intelligence Office, and that was really the cohesive glue for the intelligence community, which is comprised of 17 different agencies, including
17
different agencies, including agencies within the military. So. Things like the Intelligence and Security Command, which is an Army entity.
The NRO?
Absolutely.
Did I say it right? The National Reconnaissance?
National Reconnaissance Office is part of that for sure. Different elements in DHS, all sorts of. If you go to, I believe it's intelligence.gov, it actually provides a pretty cool breakdown of the different intelligence community entities. So I think there was a big push after 9/11 to get away from siloed information. It's definitely apparent that in the current state of where we're at in the intelligence community there's a big push towards open data, towards interoperable systems. And that's because of that silo problem you talked about. So imagine these 17 independent agencies all doing the same thing differently, right?
Right.
You have an intel analyst at the CIA that might be looking at the same exact location that some military intelligence analyst is looking at, and there's no way for them to cross-reference what they're doing because
they're interpreting it as
they're on different systems, they're on different networks. They have different leadership, different SOPs, different security clearance levels, so
different objectives.
So there's a lot of redundancy in the intelligence community. And unfortunately, I don't think I don't think that's really changed since then. I think there's been efforts on a macro level, a strategic level, which is important. But on the tactical level, I think a lot of our dollars are still being redundantly spent on, different agencies looking at the same thing and not properly sharing their data. This is a problem that we attempt to solve with our software pattern flows, which is built on top of an open API, which enables anyone that needs access to that data can plug into it. So it's it helps eliminate that silo and creates data that's really clean and interoperable with other systems. So no matter who's doing the collection, it can get distributed to who needs to see it.
Right. What does API stand for? Forgive me for asking. I just don't know what it stands for.
API stands for Application Programming Interface, and just think of it as, a plug, right? It's just it's a way for you to plug into the data that application is currently utilizing.
So all that, I'm based on what you just said, all the apps in like the App Store, those APIs, basically? Or is that's probably a loaded question?
They use APIs for sure. It's
just like an access point kind of?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Are you sure AP does not stand for access point?
I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, that's APIs are really important, and especially open APIs, because that's what enables different pieces of software to connect and talk and share data, and it helps eliminate those silos. So when we say open, that just means that you have the documentation and the instructions available for anyone to plug into what you're collecting.
When you initially said, what was it, public sharing, or I can't remember what term you used, but it being that you're in the intelligence community, It was a term that freaked me out because it makes it sound like this is all information that's publicly available and anybody can access it and anybody can, almost like a Wikipedia. And I was like, whoa, that kind of creeps me out. But you're talking about internally within DNI and all the various entities that fall under it.
Right. Are you referencing like the different networks they're using, or?
Did you say open sourced? I can't remember what you said. But either way, you've closed the door to what I was worried.
Okay. Don't worry. You'll sleep soundly tonight. You'll be fine.
Trust me, your website speaks volumes. Talk about sleeping like soundly. I've honestly, I learned about your company years ago, and I've shared with you. I've had some friends that have been on your team, and you got a sick website. When I go to the website, the dynamic of how it works, you guys hit it home. There's no question of what Geo Owl does, and it's almost like I'm watching this like recruiting video, or like a 17-year-old kid just salivating at the mouth, going to fight bad guys. And Geo Owl does that, but from an intelligence perspective. So
that's good. That's the point. So geowl.com, geowl.com. Definitely check it out. But yeah, we have some cool videos and stuff on there, and you can click through the site and see who we are as a team. And those interested and have the background in intelligence careers definitely should check that out.
Absolutely. So I got a question for you. This is totally off the subject, kind of.
Okay, I'm ready.
If you had to choose an anthem song,
okay,
and this can be any era, any decade, but if there was an anthem song for Geo Owl, what would it be? If you had to make a decision right now.
Here I am, rocking like a hurricane.
Who is that? Josh, who is that? Scorpions?
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scorpions, of course.
That's kind of how we are. We're a little bit different, right?
Of course. That's an important question.
Very important.
It is. If we had a theme song.
If you don't have a theme song, what are you doing?
You don't have a purpose. Ours, if I got to choose one for Signal Fire, it would be Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses. It just builds through it, and then at the end, it's just like this crescendo of awesomeness. Okay, good. So I'm glad we got that out of the way. Scorpions. Are you going to you need to get like a Scorpions flag to like hang up in your office.
Done.
Just to like
motivate
the troops.
Yep, already ordered.
All right, so I'm curious, where we're at right now with technology. Can you share some of like the key I don't know, 2 or 3 most valuable assets to Geo Owl now, and how that looks different from what it did 15 years ago. Like, we wouldn't have been able to have this technology that we live on today 15 years ago. Like, so basically, like, entail like how the industry as a whole has kind of progressed and the technology has advanced. Because, you know, on last week's episode, you were sharing about how you're in Iraq, and, you know, given the time that you got into the intelligence community, they were still using backlit tables to illuminate imagery.
Right.
Clearly, they're not doing that anymore. So I'm just curious as to like some of the key technological functions that are at the foundation of Geo Owl that really exemplify how the industry has evolved in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, that gets into data. There are so many different sources of intelligence now. Back then, 2004, 2005, you know, the rise of commercial satellites wasn't really a thing. Now, commercial satellites are all over the place. There's all sorts of companies launching commercial satellites, and all those satellites have sensors on them, which collect data and sell that data back to stakeholders that can use it. So I would say just the explosion of information and the explosion of data has really been paramount to where we're at today in the intelligence community with our technology. For us as a company that produces and builds technology, you know, things like bandwidth are important, right?
Now, is bandwidth something that is part of your infrastructure, or is something that can like float through the air? But that makes sense. Feel free to say if it's a stupid question.
Yeah, I mean, bandwidth can float through the air, right? You have a cell phone right there, which presumably is talking to a cell tower, and it has a bandwidth, a data bandwidth. So of course it can float through the air. But what I mean by bandwidth is just being able to get information so quickly, right? The time it takes now to get information is reduced to nothing. Not completely nothing, as people on the other side of the world will tell you. We work in what's called near real time. So we can be analyzing an ISR sensor from across the world, but we're sitting in a building here in the United States. So it's sort of like live TV from across the planet. That didn't used to be the case. That was very difficult back in 2004, 2005. But it's been an investment by our government to make that happen. And we spend billions and billions and billions of dollars on satellites and connections throughout the life cycle of our intelligence data. And then for some reason or another, we seem to stop that investment once we receive the data. We then say, okay, we have the data.
We're good now.
We're good. We'll get it figured out. But that's where actually the most investment is occurring right now. So that's why you're seeing such heavy investment into things like artificial intelligence and machine learning, because that's a problem, right? Now we have all this data, and now we need to figure out what to do with it.
Right.
So there's all sorts of various programs that are crucial to where the DoD is at right now and to where the intelligence community is at right now.
So a conversation that I feel like I have fairly frequently with some of my veteran buddies that served after I did, because I permanently separated in 2008. And I have, you know, close friends that are still in or just recently transitioned out of the military. And their experiences in theater blow my mind. And it's not on the combat side, because combat is combat, you know. But when, you know, I compare my experiences in Afghanistan in 2001 and Iraq in 2003, and I felt very rudimentary as far as our technology. And, you know, I was kind of on like, you know, I was high speed, low drag in the reconnaissance community. But even, I mean, looking back even now, it's just like, what were we doing, you know? And I hear stories about, you know, my buddies deploying, and they're like, oh, well, I was in the command post, and we were watching the whole operation on ISR. And it's like,
right.
I mean, a couple of years ago, I'd asked, what even is that? And it's fascinating to see how the technology with regards to, you know, operations overseas, how it's evolved. One of the biggest questions I have is we have all these different types of assets. You have satellites, you have unmanned vehicles, you have manned aircraft. I mean, don't they kind of do the same thing?
No.
I mean, obviously, I know satellites right now aren't dropping bombs and putting rounds on target, but like, how do those three assets? How do they differentiate as far as the actual intelligence and data they can provide?
Yeah, that's a great question. So they all provide a different flavor, if you will, of intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. So a satellite is great for, obviously, it's low detection, right? So people don't know you're collecting because they can't see satellite. But obviously the resolution that high up is going to be a lot less, right? So anything you collect is going to be lower resolution, including SIGINT data. So it does have limited cases. We are starting to see more satellite video, which is a really interesting area. But that's still a new thing.
Is that the FMV, the full motion video?
Yeah, well, full motion video can be any video that's moving, right? It's full motion. You can collect full motion video from a manned or unmanned asset,
right?
But the satellites provide a strategic opportunity to collect information, whereas manned and unmanned sensors, which are typically launched and recovered closer to where you're collecting, they're going to give you much higher resolution. So an unmanned asset, obviously you're not putting a human life at risk. So that's vitally important, that we don't put our pilots and sensor operators at risk. And because they can sometimes have very long flight times, they can loiter and collect for a long time, 18, 20 hours of collection, depending on their payload and sensor packages and things like that on the unmanned side. Now, on the manned side, typically they can't loiter as long, right? Because the manned aircraft, they have crews, they have big, heavy equipment on there, but they can carry much bigger payloads, so they can have a lot of different sensors. So you can have one manned aircraft with 10 different types of sensors on it, including video or still frame, LiDAR, hyperspectral, I mean, you name it. Just depends on what the mission requires. So they all have a unique role in the battle space. And at Geo Owl, we help the military optimize that collection. We help them understand what's best for the certain situation that they're working on. Being able to optimize intelligence collection assets saves us time and saves us money. And time is vitally important in the intelligence life cycle. So they rely on us to provide those vital services of helping them understand how to get the best answer, what assets to use, what sensors to use, where they should be collecting at, and where they should be flying. So I would say it's a great question because, ISR is a very ambiguous term. It can mean anything, intelligence, surveillance, or reconnaissance. Those are three massive fields.
Right. Yeah.
But I think in the military space specifically, the satellites, the manned assets, the unmanned assets. Now we're actually seeing balloons as well. It's a big thing. Balloons that fly in the stratosphere.
How are balloons being used in 2021?
Yeah. So there's a few companies right now that are piloting balloons in the stratosphere. I don't know how they do it, but
so we're talking like 120,000 feet plus in the air,
way up there in the stratosphere, whatever the level of stratosphere is.
Right.
I'm not quite sure. I know it's above where a commercial aircraft flies. So maybe 75,000 feet or so. Balloons provide a different capability. I would say that are not as proven as unmanned and manned aircraft, but they provide kind of the resolution of a lower altitude sensor with the capability of the satellite to be undetected. So you kind of get the high resolution collection without the worries about being detected by an adversary. So it's very interesting. And of course they all have multiple uses, not just in the DoD space. I mean, you can take any of these. A lot of this same equipment is being used to track wildfires out west, or to track the migration of species across Africa, or you name it. Climate change effects on the coast. All these same types of sensors and information can be used for a myriad of things. And at Geo Owl, we're really the experts on what those various elements are. So we can apply what we know from our years of experience in the military to almost any commercial application.
Right.
So it's actually a really unique and interesting field to be in.
I love it. It blows my mind that like something so fundamental and archaic technology like a balloon. I mean, balloons were like they were the.
Well, it's not a balloon in the traditional sense. They look really funky. They're like these big old massive things. They have huge. They're very tall and made of crazy material. But
yeah, but the fact that they're playing a role in like revolutionary technology today,
right?
I mean, that's crazy because that light at the infancy of flight and. 150 years ago when they started putting gases in the balloons and, it's kind of cool how it just all comes back.
Yeah,
I love it.
Balloons are interesting. They provide interesting capability. But like I said, kind of unproven at this stage.
Right.
But they'll get there.
Awesome. I love it. Well, hey, we are out of time. For people that are listening to this episode, what is the way that they can find out more about Geo Owl, about the company?
Yeah. So definitely go to our website at geoowl.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We do have Twitter and stuff. We don't really use Twitter. But those social media platforms are good. We usually share information on there. That's our website. It's really the best. So geoowl.com.
Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for the second episode of the Geo Owl podcast. We will see you next time.
Visit geoowl.com and learn how Geo Owl implements next-generation intelligence advancement technologies to aid the Department of Defense with precision and expertise analysis. Geo Owl.
The new era of intelligence.